out later, but they're all getting out earlier, or vice versa. Can we still support that program? So there's a lot of things we'd have to look at. But my first question would be, what do the teachers, parents, and students think about that, and then go from there.
Donna, your thought about high school start time and how it would impact Chelmsford if it were tried to be implemented.
Yes, and also thank you to Carlos for sharing his paper with me, and I look forward to reading that. He and I have also had a chance to talk about this in the past, and I think that there are many things that need to be considered. The average teenager needs about 8.5 to 9 hours, 9.5 hours of sleep a night. So we could start school later, but the question is, are they going to go to bed later too? So, and actually one of the things that they found was that no matter what time you start school, kids still get up about 25 minutes before it's time to get on that bus. But I do think there are many, many, many considerations that have to be looked at. Transportation for the whole town, end of school activities, whether or not, this is a truly viable option. I happen to teach at Lowell High School. We have a start time of 7:55. I can honestly say that I have not seen a decrease in the number of tardies, but I can say that with regards to afternoon activities, we actually have to dismiss students in order to be able to get to their activities on time, because so many other schools in the state do not have a later start time. So I think that this is something that we would have to take a look at and really coordinate with other cities and towns if we were to make it a truly viable option.
Thank you. We have members from both the Lowell Sun Press and also from the Chelmsford Independent, and I want to give them an opportunity if they have questions for the candidates. Alana Melanson from the Lowell Sun, do you have a question for the school committee candidates?
Yes.
Please.
So the school committee is about to most likely authorize the superintendent to go forward another statement of interest to the MSBA for a high school project. I wanted to get candidates' thoughts on, is this the right school project for Chelmsford at this time, or do you have any other ideas on what should happen with school facilities? Let's
start with you, Donna, on that, if you would please answer the reporter's question. And did
yes.
everyone hear it? Could everyone hear what the question was? Is that the superintendent has been asked by the school committee to initiate the beginning of applying to the Mass State Building Funding Support Group about potential funding for a Chelmsford project. So the reporter's question was, is this the right time? Is this the project that Chelmsford should be looking at? And so, Don, I turn that over to you, hoping that was a close paraphrase of what you said. Thank you.
So actually, this will be the second time they'll be submitting an SOI to the School Building Association. And we knew that this was going to be a process that may take many, many years. We are submitting this to be able to be invited into the process to begin the discussion of, what is it that we need to be able to do here in town. I can say that I think this is going to be a multi-year process. A lot of the schools throughout the state that have been accepted into the grant process and to begin the discussions are in really, really bad condition. And as much as we would like state-of-the-art facilities, and I certainly would like to see that here for us here in Chelmsford, it may take quite some time before we reach the level of need that we need to demonstrate in order for that to be able to happen. We've recently replaced roofs, windows, and added the modular classrooms to increase the amount of space that we have. So these kinds of things, if you look at what the needs are on the SBA in terms of what it is that you have to be invited into that process, we're not quite there yet. But I think in several years we will be. And I think we should begin planning now.
Jamie, your thoughts on about how Chelmsford is proceeding at this time in terms of looking at funding from the state?
I mean, we're doing what we need to do with the statement of interest, right? This will be our second year. We were denied last year. I do have to question, Dr. Lang had mentioned that another district had recommended 7 years in a row for the same statement of interest and was denied 7 years in a row. So it kind of makes me think if we're doing the same thing year to year and we're getting the same results, shouldn't we change what it is we're doing, because it seems like we're just beating our head against a brick wall. But I do understand that it is a lengthy process. I mean, it could be another 7 years before we even get into the grant acceptance before we even start the planning if we're going to even get a new building. So in that regard, I think it's something we need to look at, and maybe is there a way we can petition to Beacon Hill, maybe change this process? Because what we're doing now and addressing our need now will change in 7 years. And if we try and project what our need will be in 7 or 10 years, who knows? We hope to have a great boom in our community, which would have a great increase in our population. So that need, again, could change even if based off our own projections. So that's where I stand. I just think, we're going through the process, but I think maybe some advocacy on changing that process because it seems a little cumbersome to be effective.
Thank you. Margaret, I'll get to you in just a second. Let me do one voter question, and then I'll get to you from the Chelmsford Independent. This is from a voter who sees that perhaps candidates for the school committee may have close relationships with either union members or present school committee members. And if that applies to either one of you, they would like to know how that would affect your decisions. Jamie, if you're in that situation that you know union members or school committee members currently, how will that impact you if you were elected to the board, please?
I have no personal relationships with any school committee member or, Tina Williams, my co-manager sitting in the audience. She's probably the closest thing I have to a friend that I would consider a personal relationship who I trust with my children. I've only been in Chelmsford less than 2 years. So, yes, I met John Salmon on a Sunday. I pulled papers on a Monday, and I decided to run for school committee, but it was truly my choice, and I have no agenda. I have no private relationship with anyone, and I'm truly here as an advocate for our children and for the parents and the teachers and the administrators and the community as a whole to be able to properly advocate for our children in the school committee.
And Donna, your response to this voter's question, please.
Yes, after living in town for 20 years and having kids who've gone through the school system through K through 12, I do have a relationship with members of the school committee, both past and present. I've been attending a lot of school committee meetings. I've had a lot of questions over the years. There's been a lot of information that I have tried to seek out. And in order to be able to do that, you have to be able to talk to people. And when you talk to them a lot, you develop a relationship with them. Also, I've been involved in other committees and organizations in town. And one of the things that you'll notice in town is that there's a great group of people who are very actively involved in many, many things. So my paths cross, with these people on a regular basis. And it's been my honor to know these people and to work with them in serving the community.
Thank you. Margaret Smith from the Chelmsford Independent, if you would ask your question of the two candidates, please.
Sure. My question is, recently I had a conversation with Superintendent of Schools, Jay Lang, and we were talking about some of the changes that are occurring within the school population itself. And just to give two examples of what we talked about, one was the efforts to try to meet the emotional needs of some students who have them, especially at the elementary grade level, and also the increasingly diverse population, which has also meant students who have English language proficiency needs, who speak English as a second or other language in the home. Some of that's reflected in the proposed budget for this year. My question is, sitting on the school committee, what do you see as the school committee's role in working with the administration, looking at the changing trends and how to best meet those needs as they arise?
Donna, would you take first crack at that, please?
Sure. So with regards to the first part of your question, dealing with students who have social and emotional problems, I think that the current budget reflects the implementation of a social and emotional program. Now, we currently have one at the high school and one at the middle school, and the one area that we were lacking is at the elementary school. So this budget will take care of putting a program in place for students who have an emotional disability. And I think that they're in the process right now of, finalizing what that program would look like and then making sure that all of the appropriate resources are put in place. With regards to ELL students, we're hiring another English language learner teacher. I think that this will be very helpful in terms of making sure that we have the appropriate programming in place to be able to deal with students who have English as a second language. I think that this is an area that we're going to continue to need to grow as time goes on. And I think that also providing staff with the necessary professional development. So one of the things that's happened is teachers have to become SEI endorsed, and a lot of teachers have completed this class already, so it's going to be a matter of now teaching them how to use the techniques that we've learned in these courses in order to be able to help kids who are English language learners in their classroom.
So, Jamie, it was a two-part question from Margaret, and the first had to do with the school committee's role in meeting the elementary age-level emotional needs, social and emotional, and then the second one about the new diversity in the schools and English language learners. Thank you.
Well, and Donna already commented on two proposed plans that are in the upcoming year's budget so that you can see where the school committee and Dr. Lang's focus is on trying to actually meet those needs. I think another area that we can do, or something else that as a school committee we could do, is ensuring that we have teachers in the classrooms assessing and having the capabilities to be innovative on how to handle those situations and then bring to us what they need. And then as a school committee, we listen to what those needs are, and then we try and do the best that we can to make sure that the resources and funding is available to provide those needs and fulfill those resources for the school committee, or for the schools by the school committee.
Thank you. And thank you, Margaret, for the question. Okay, for you, Jamie, can you name one significant accomplishment in your career which you believe is the most important and best exemplifies the ideas that you represent? You have 30 seconds to think.
No pressure, no pressure.
No, one significant accomplishment in your career which you believe is the most important and best exemplifies the ideas you represent.
I can see the one that I'm most proud of. And it was me being awarded and inducted into the Sergeant Artie Murphy Club. And if you ask any soldier who knows, they will tell you one of the most prestigious leadership awards you can earn in the Army is to be awarded and inducted into the Sergeant Artie Murphy Club. It's less than 1%. It's very prestigious. I was one of only 2 actual females within my brigade. I was the only female within my division to make that accomplishment, and it was a very long, timeless process, and it questions my capabilities, my knowledge, and my ability to lead and educate and train soldiers. And I think obtaining that reward, earning that induction into the Sergeant Artie Murphy Club was probably one of my proudest career moments.
How do you think that exemplifies the ideas that you represent, just to take it on to
my strong leadership capabilities, I think, as far as, having that strong leadership capabilities, bringing the cohesive team together, listening to the concerns, addressing them, and being able to execute.
Thank you. And Donna, in your career accomplishment and how that exemplifies your ideas?
Well, you know, I guess I could point to, being Teacher of the Year in Lowell, Citizen of the Year in Chelmsford, but, those really don't mean nearly as much to me as the accomplishment that I feel on the day that I look into one of my students' eyes and that concept clicks, okay, and they get it. And you realize, okay, the joy that they feel on having learned something new and that sense of accomplishment and success that they feel. And there's nothing like it. There really is nothing like it. There's nothing like that being in front of a classroom when that moment, you had that connection with your student. So I guess that I would consider those my greatest accomplishments. And it's what I strive for every single day as a teacher. And I know what it takes, I know what it takes for me in the classroom in order for that to happen, okay? And I want to make sure that all of the teachers here in Chelmsford have the same opportunities, and I know that they do. But the resources available to have it happen day in and day out, and just love coming to work every single day just for the sake of seeing that joy of learning in your students' faces.
Thank you. The Chelmsford School Committee has often used the SAT scores as a method of comparing the success of students with those in other communities. Do you feel that's an appropriate and reliable method to evaluate the Chelmsford school system? Donna?
I think it's one method. I don't think it should be the only method. And there are some colleges that are actually not using SAT scores as an admission requirement any longer. Actually, within the last year to year and a half, UMass Lowell actually considered not having it as an admission requirement. So I think that it's just one method of measuring a student's success. If you had gone by my SAT scores, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today, nor would I have I been successful in college. And because I'm not that type of test taker, I'm just not do well on standardized tests. I have a great deal of admiration for the kids who have to sit through MCAS now because those questions are pretty hard. And so I think that there are many methods that we should be able to use because not everybody learns the same way, and not everybody will be able to show how much they know in the same way.
And Jamie, your thoughts on the appropriateness and the reliability of using SATs in evaluating the Chelmsford school system, please?
I agree. I think the SAT should not be a sole source of evaluation and rating. Colleges don't admit students solely based on SATs, so why as a school district are we rating solely based on SATs? Can it be a factor in the matrix of our rating scheme? Yes, but should be the sole factor? Absolutely not. I think we should be rated as the college admissions process is, so that we are comparable and we make sense, so that when students are looking at high school or colleges or parents are looking at moving to a district with a high school that is well-received graduates in a college environment, then that's how we should be rated. How are the colleges accepting applicants? And we should be equivalent to that so that we can show a real comparison for parents.
Thank you. Okay, all of the 4 questions I have left are all from the voters. Jamie, we'll start with you on this one, please. If a teacher has brought his concerns about a student, no, I'm sorry. If a teacher brings concerns about student needs to the administration and there is no response to resolve that issue, who should that teacher go to next to make sure that the student's needs are met?
My understanding of the chain of command is if the school administration is not executing their duties, then they have to escalate it to the Dr. Lang and the superintendent. And then if the superintendent is failing to execute his duties, that's where the school committee comes involved, because we're there to make sure that the superintendent is doing his job.
Donna, your understanding of what would happen in a situation like that? The teacher's already talked about student needs in the administration. They don't feel they've gotten a resolution. As a school committee member, where do you see it going next?
I see it going to the principal next, but I would say this. I think that, sometimes I think that we don't have, one of the things that I would like to see is some standards across the district in terms of what parents can expect, okay, in terms of a response from a teacher or a principal. Okay, so I think that, because I think that waiting a week is much too long. I mean, any parent that has a genuine concern, shouldn't be left feeling that anxious for that long while they wait for a response. I think that one of the things that needs to happen is that, as I said, they should always go to the teacher first. And if there is no response after an appropriate amount of time, then they should go to the principal. And if they feel still that at that point that their needs and their requests or their questions have not been answered, then they should go to the superintendent. I think it's very, very important that we preserve those lines of communication, because when there's breakdowns, I think we need to know who it is that we have to hold accountable. And if we have a situation where parents are jumping over a teacher and a principal and going right to the superintendent, then we can't really tell if there hasn't been communication between those parties. So I think in order to be able to evaluate teachers and principals as to whether or not they're doing their job, we have to move through those avenues first.
Thank you. This is from a voter. Do you believe it's appropriate for students to participate in a student walkout during school hours? Donna?
I'm with you.
Really is a teacher you're going to ask me this?
I didn't ask it. It was asked by a voter. But yes.
Yes, actually, something I do. I think this is a teachable moment, okay? I think that this is an opportunity to learn about civil disobedience. I think this is an opportunity to learn about what it is that you want to say and what you hope it is that you'll be able to accomplish by doing this. I do think that if the students want to be able to participate in a walkout, that they should have communication with the administration so that this can be done in an orderly and safe manner. And I think that so that we can define, as I said, what the purpose is. But in addition to okay, a walkout, I guess I would also challenge students to look at other avenues that they may want to pursue to get their message across. So, for example, if they have genuine concerns, whether it be about gun safety or whatever it might be, school safety, invite our legislators in. Allow the students to have their own public forum where they can speak directly to the people who make the laws and let their concerns be known. So I think that we should sit down and we should be having a conversation about this. But yes, I would support that. But I would also support students who chose not to want to walk out as well.
Jamie, your thoughts on student walkout during student school hours, please.
Obviously, I think at the middle and elementary school levels, I think it would be inappropriate. I don't know if they would have the mental comprehension to be able to understand really what that meaning is. So having your kindergartners, your fourth graders out there doing a walkout, I think would be inappropriate. At the high school level, you know, walkouts and demonstrations are part of our history. That's how we as a public demonstrate to our governing body what we think or don't think or how we feel and don't feel. So it is something that they have a right to exercise. I do think, though, that we need to ensure they do understand what it is they're walking out on and walking out for. Is it to get out of school, so we're just going to follow with the group, or do they believe in what the meaning and purpose is? And I would encourage teachers and students to look at other ways to still relay that same message and be effective. So, for example, this recent walkout we had out because of the gun violence that's been occurring in schools. The gun violence is there's another systemic problem going on amongst high school teachers, and along with gun violence, it's causing death, and that's suicide. But there's one thing causing both of those events, and that's bullying and the way we're treating each other. So walking out and understanding the legislational needs for gun control is one thing, but is there other ways that we can affect the bigger problem? Do the students understand that? Are they being provided or advised in a way to be more effective in meeting and trying to conquer the bigger issue? And do they know how to do it?
Thank you. Before I go to the last question and closing statements from the candidates, do the reporters have follow-up questions or second questions? Or are you all set? Okay, Alana Melanson from the Lowell Sun.
Are there any areas that you feel where there is a great need that's not being met in the school budget?
I think it's your turn to take that first, Jamie. Gaps in the school budget that you would like to see rectified, please.
I think everyone would agree that the biggest gap in the school budget is there's not enough money, right? I think it's really hard to say where the school budget gaps are because Chelmsford School District was obviously in the red, it got themselves into a, not of their own district's accord, but they got themselves in a financial situation which put them behind the power curve, and they finally got themselves out of it. So I think that they're doing the best that they can with what they have after making up for that problem. I mean, obviously the gap is, yes, we don't have enough money, but with the money we do have, majority of it's going to salaries. So whatever's left, I think we're trying to manage as best we can to spend what little money is left to support the needs. So it's really hard to say if there's a big gap because there's not a whole lot of money to have a big gap about.
And Donna, your thoughts about spaces that you'd like to see more money spent on?
Yeah, as Jamie said, I think that it's, you always want more money for education. You like more money for your teachers. You like more money for programming and curriculum. But, what I'm really proud of is the fact that the town manager told us how much money it was that we were going to get this year, and we were able to take that. We were able to meet our obligations. We were able to add additional programming, and we will also have some additional monies set aside for any special education costs that we may incur. So I think that it was, I don't see that there's any gaps. Necessarily, I am very pleased with the way this current budget looks. I think it's something that we need to continue to be attentive to. I think that it was great having public input through a variety of different sessions, and I think that type of public input going forward will be very, very important to us as the school committee develops their budget.
This is sort of a follow-up to that, actually, Donna. That's a voter question. If you were in the situation that you were crafting the budget and the choice was between more administrators in the elementary school or more counseling staff and social workers, where would your priority be in terms of deciding between those two?
Well, I think this is probably as a result of the administrators being placed in the budget. So it would be the 2 vice principals for the 4 elementary schools. And I guess one of the things that I would say is I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to assess our needs. And then we have to assess what staff we currently have. So, for example, at the elementary school level, each elementary school has a guidance counselor and has a school psychologist. I think we would have to talk about what their roles are, what is it, that they're seeing in terms of social, emotional issues or crises on a day-to-day basis. I think we need more information before we decide whether or not we're going to add social workers. With regards to the vice principals, I do know that schools at this size, very rarely do not have a vice principal. There's an inordinate amount of responsibility on the principals to be able to deal with so many different issues, but one of the big ones is teacher evaluations. One of the things that I think principals have a hard time doing is being able to get into the classrooms, to take a look at the teachers, and to be able to offer instructional support. And I think that if we can free up some of the principals' time by adding a vice principal, that will then allow the principals to be in the classrooms and assisting the teachers in whatever way it is that they need, then the kids will benefit as well.
And Jamie, if you were in that position that you had to make that decision between administrators or counseling staff, where would you come down, please?
Obviously, I'd want to go to the teachers and see what is their need. But based on what teachers I've spoken to, parents, and the fact that there is such a strong need for the assistance and resource for emotional and social behavioral children, I would say we need social workers. We don't need more administrators. I've also been spoken to several who say that principals are so tied up with dealing with children with the social and emotional needs that they're not able to do their own jobs as a principal. So if we had a social worker who's trained, educated, and specialized in handling those needs and focusing on those needs, then maybe the principal would be able to be freed up to do some more of that administrative level. And having someone trained and be able to educate the teachers and train the teachers on how to better appropriately deal with those types of situations, I think would have been more, in my opinion, but obviously it comes down to what does the school needs, and it's a tough decision. So, but I think in my opinion, I would have went with the social worker aspect as opposed to additional administrators.
Thank you. Now, before the closing statements, you each have an opportunity to ask the other person a question. Not mandatory, but if you have one you'd like to ask. Jamie, do you have a question you would like to ask of Donna?
I do.
Okay. Shoot.
So, and it's something.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry, Margaret.
I didn't have an opportunity.
I apologize. Can I do this part first of the answering their questions, and then I will give you that opportunity. Thank you, Margaret, very much. Yes, Jamie.
So, and we've talked briefly about it with the budget, and I know that they have earmarked $300,000 for therapeutic resources, and they have for this upcoming school year budget. But it's been recently stated that we could be 2 or 3 years away from actually implementing such a resource. So I was just wondering, what did you think, if that resource isn't implemented within the next school year, where do you think that $300,000 should go if they don't use it for the actual therapeutic resource?
Well, my understanding is that they are going to be implementing it for September. I think this was based on the feedback that teachers had given to their principals and consequently the superintendent around the need for social emotional programming for kids with an emotional disability. And it goes back to the whole, social worker versus vice principal. We've got guidance counselors in every elementary school. We have school psychologists in every elementary school, and we're about to add a $300,000 social emotional program for students with emotional disabilities. And I think this is a terrific idea. But it's why I felt that, given all of those resources, that what we should do is add another layer of support for teachers through the vice principals by freeing up the principals' time to be able to be in the classrooms and providing them with the support that they need.
Thank you. Can I, I'm sorry, but I don't, And I agree.
I don't want to get into a debate here.
She didn't answer the question. That's all. She
Okay.
didn't really answer the.
Okay.
If
Then let's-
if the
let's-
money
let's-
is not used for the 300,000.
Okay.
But I think she has, I think that her answer is it's going to be.
Oh,
so-
okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm
so we
sorry.
have
I
to-
apologize.
No, no, that's
I
okay.
apologize.
Donna, in return, do you have a question for Jamie? And then Margaret will get to your question.
Sure. Jamie, how would you engage in team building in which other school committee members are your co-equal and under no obligation to listen to you?
Well, I don't think anyone is in obligation to listen to anybody, right? But as a level of professionalism, when we come on board, we have a code of ethics, duties and responsibilities, and a role to play. And part of that is being professional and working together as a team. It's not a matter of anyone being obligated to listen to me specifically, but it's a part of the criteria within the job you're serving as a school committee member, right? Be a team player, come together as a unit, be professional. So I don't think it's a matter of anyone being obligated to listen to me specifically, but as a matter of their duties and responsibilities within the role they fulfilled at the school committee.
Thank you. Thank you both. And now, Margaret, with apologies, please ask your question of the two candidates.
Thank you again. Again, I'm Margaret Smith from the Chelmsford Independent. And my question is, we've talked a lot this evening about different kinds of needs within the school system, including needs for emotional support, of, well, both students and teachers. My question is very strictly and specifically about academic areas. Are there academic programs or disciplines, and it could be more than one, and at more than one grade level, that you feel could perhaps use more support in and of themselves, either through the budget or anything that is within the school committee's capacity to do? And again, this is entirely separate from anything about population needs or emotional support needs, but about academic and curriculum areas.
So, Donna, do you see any specific academic programs or disciplines that you think need to be evaluated, worked on?
So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction in terms of our increasing our science and technology areas. I would like to see those continue to grow. I think that a lot of what we need to be able to do is take a look at what are the interests of the students, what are the employment opportunities after high school, what are the skills that they need to be able to have, and to be able to focus on those areas in our curriculum. One of the things that's is possibly going to come online is an MCAS test for history. And if that comes online, then I think that, and it's a 10th grade requirement in order to be able to pass it for your high school diploma, then I think that we would have to take a look at making sure that we have the resources in place to allow students to be able to pass that test.
Thank you. Jamie, can you identify academic programs or disciplines that you think need perhaps a little bit of attention from the school committee?
I would say from a school committee perspective, we have to look at what our authority and responsibilities are. Do we have authority in the school curriculum to adjust that, or is it dictated or mandated, or in the other hands? Is it our authority as a school committee member? Personally, I think we have great programs available and we are moving forward, and I think in the high school level we could increase our level of STEM activities and courses and curriculum as it advances, because that's definitely where the society is going and where our colleges are going in the STEM field, and I think enhancing or continuing to grow in that area would definitely be a benefit for all.
Thank you. And now each of the candidates has a 2-minute closing statement to wrap up their introduction of themselves to you. And I will start with you, Jamie, and then Donna, you will have the last word.
Just like to take the opportunity again to say thank you for this opportunity to come out here and to speak and to answer your questions and get to know everyone, and everyone to hopefully get to know a little bit better about me. I think I've demonstrated or articulated to you my history and my purpose and why I'm choosing to do this. I will say I didn't just wake up one day and say, let's go be in the school committee. As soon as I got into town, I became as active. PTO, I'm currently the co-treasurer for the Harrington PTO. I was the assistant coach for the Chelmsford Soccer League team for my son last summer. I'm active within my church at St. John's. And I'm active with my son in his Cub Scouts, his Cub Scouts troop or den. So, I've always had a call and a desire to be active, proactive, and engaged within the community or within the society that I'm in. So I want to continue that dedication to Chelmsford. I think there's a lot of great things going on in Chelmsford, but I also think there's some things that need to be fixed. There are areas where we can improve, and I think I can help lead the community, or help lead the committee and the community into making some of those improvements when it comes to the school district. So I ask, April 3rd, I humbly ask for your vote. Jamie Outland Brown for School Committee.
And Donna.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring tonight's debate. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss the issues and topics related to the school committee in ways that we can work together to develop and maintain an exemplary school system. There are certain tenets that we must believe to be true if we're to have a solid foundation on which to operate. These tenets should include: all students deserve a free and appropriate education. Parents have the right to advocate for their child's needs to grow academically, socially, and emotionally. We expect our staff to be professional and highly qualified individuals. They should be afforded every opportunity possible to have the resources and professional development necessary for success in the classroom. A good education system requires good leadership. A good education system involves collaboration with all of the stakeholders. This would include teachers, administration, students, parents, businesses, all taxpayers, and all the other boards and committees in town. I believe that my teaching experience, knowledge of the school system and town will give me a unique and helpful perspective as a member of the school committee. This knowledge, in addition to the skills that I have developed in the classroom and while serving on various boards and committees in town, will allow me to be able to be a part of the solution to the immediate problems that we face on the school committee, and as well as develop a long-term vision for the success of the system. My name is Donna Newcomb, and I respectfully ask for your vote on April 3rd.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for running. Thank you for your questions. While the candidates for the Board of Selectmen seat are making their way up to the table, thank you very much. Thank you, Donna, very much indeed. Let me just review for you the 7 questions that are going to be on the ballot. 5 of them have to do with changes to the town charter and the town of Chelmsford, and I'm going to paraphrase them, so I hope just to give you a taste so you will go read them verbatim yourself. Question 1, currently town meeting members who are running for re-election must, please, may I have your attention, must have fulfilled nomination, take out nomination papers and get 20 signatures, 25 signatures. This would allow incumbents to get their name on the ballot by simply notifying the town clerk that they wanted to run for re-election. That's question number 1. Question number 2, could we keep conversations down, please? There's a huge, wonderful vestibule outside. Question number 2, there currently is a provision in Chelmsford Charter that says is that if you were defeated as a write-in candidate, you may not run to fill a vacancy as a town meeting member unless you got at least 10% of the votes that were cast. A vote yes on question 2 would delete that requirement. You'd be able to run as a defeated write-in candidate no matter how many votes you'd gotten in the election. Question number 3, the constable is currently elected. This change in the charter would make it appointed by qualifications established by the town manager jointly with the chief of police. Question number 4 would require that if the selectmen establish a town management selection or evaluation committee, it include not only selectmen but also voters of the town of Chelmsford. And the 5th change to the charter that you're being asked to consider on April 3rd is that if an assistant town manager is appointed for a term not to exceed 6 months, that contract may be renewed for not more than 6 months more. That would be a change in your charter. And the last 2 questions, 6 and 7, are not binding. The Board of Selectmen is simply asking for the opinion of the voters. It's the Board of Selectmen that decide whether or not tax classification in Chelmsford will be divided between a different tax rate for the residential and for the business. You currently have a single tax rate. They want to know whether you think there should be 2 tax classification rates in Chelmsford. You should vote yes if you think it should be split between residential and commercial. You should vote no if you think it should stay the way it is. And then question 7 is, if you do think it should be differentiated between commercial and residential, do you think there should be an exemption for, quote, small businesses? And they would get a 10% decrease in their taxes if there was a classification change. So in very brief summary, just to whet your appetite, that's the review of the 7 questions. Please either go to the town website to get the wording exactly or pick up one of these sheets that Phoebe is holding up here in the front that has the complete wording, as it will be on the ballot on April 3rd. And I have no idea who's on my right. Well, I can tell the gentleman. I think I can figure this out. Hold on while I get my papers. So these are the 3 people who are running for the 2 seats on the Board of Selectmen. George Dixon on my right is an incumbent who's running for re-election. Emily Antool, can you tell me which one of you is it? Thank you so much. Is going for her. She is not an incumbent, so she is running for the seat as would be a new member. And Laura Merrill, who is in the middle, is currently an incumbent and is running for re-election. We're going to use exactly the same format that we used in the last one. The questions will be a combination of questions written by the League Board, as well as those submitted by you who are here, and also some that have been emailed from voters who are watching from the comfort of their home. And then there will be questions that have a 90-second answer. And then they will have an opportunity to ask each other questions. And we will have questions from the reporters, from the Sun and from the Independent. And then closing statements of 2 minutes. All right? So the first question, which will sort of introduce the candidates to you, is from the League Board. George, could you tell us why you're running for re-election to the board? What are your qualifications that makes you think you are the most suited for this position, more so than your opponents, or at least one of your opponents? George.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've served 9 years on the board, and I feel as though I've probably worked with almost every committee there is in town. I've worked with most departments in town.
Got left.
And I've lived in this town my whole life. So I feel as though I have a pretty good handle on what has gone on in the last 9 years and maybe 70 years, 75 years, 72 years, whatever. And I have some things I'd like to finish. I'm hoping this is my last term. I hope I'm able to serve one more term, so that I would like very much to bring people together, get more people involved. As somebody said in the last debate, there are so few people that are involved in so many things. And I don't think that's fair to the town. I don't think it's fair to the people or the organization. So I think we need a lot more people, a lot of the stakeholders, to get involved. I want more people to get involved in what we're doing in this town. And I think that would be a big win. And that's probably as big a goal as I could have. That was what I set out to be, and I'm glad it was brought up in the first debate.
Thank you. Laura, what are your qualifications to be on the Board of Selectmen, and why are you running?
I feel the responsibility placed on me by the taxpayers to spend their money wisely and protect their quality of life, which is why I am running for re-election to the Board of Selectmen. During my first term as Selectman and my 3 terms as serving on town meeting representative, I have expressed my concerns about the levels of funding that has been approved for non-essential expenditures, and many of these projects are being added to our town's outstanding debt. I've also supported many policies and funding intended to help preserve our community and town resources. I'm running for re-election because I feel I have more work to do to try to reduce the town's spending and to preserve the Chelmsford I love for current and future generations. My 23 years of experience as a business solutions developer has made me a great problem solver with the ability to see the issues from all aspects. I will continue to encourage collaboration between the town manager and the elected boards and committees to protect what the sires have won and to find sustainable ways to maintain it for the decades to come.
Thank you. So Emily Antool is not yet an incumbent on the Board of Selectmen, but she would like to be. Emily, why have you chosen to run, and what are your qualifications to serve on the board, please?
I represent younger families. I represent up-and-coming members. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. I am interested in maintaining green spaces and promoting green spaces within Chelmsford. I'm interested in maintaining and improving our school system for current and future residents. I am interested in maintaining and improving the services that the town provides for all residents. So I was a teacher and I was a project manager, and I had to work with a whole lot of people in both of those roles. As a project manager, I had a team in Argentina and another one in Colombia, and I managed them via Instant Messenger. And I worked in textbook publishing and translation. And then as a teacher, I taught Spanish and French. And I've traveled. I've had hundreds of students. I have worked with a wide variety of other teachers and administrators. I am really good at looking at the big picture, figuring out the goals, clearly articulating them, breaking down the long-term goals into smaller chunks, and getting those smaller tasks completed on time and making them work towards the larger goal. I feel that sometimes the board seems to lack focus and seems to lack direction, and I think that perhaps my project management experience will help that.
Thank you very much for all three of you for introducing yourselves. This question was created by the League Board. I mentioned in reviewing the ballot questions that 2 of them have to do with tax classification. So we'll start with you, Laura, on this one. If the voters were to approve the idea of tax classification divided between residential and business, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, will you support the voters if they and the will of the people on that vote?
Regarding tax classification, this is something that the Board of Selectmen has to look at once a year. It's written into our charter. It's a very important topic. When we take this question to the ballot, the voters are going to give us this information, and that is going to be one piece of the pie. If you look at the charter, there are about 10 or so documents that the town is supposed to provide the Board of Selectmen every year as part of the tax classification review. And the outcome of the vote, the public vote in April, will be just one more piece of information that the Board of Selectmen will be able to consider when making their decision next December.
Thank you. Emily, will you support the will of the people and follow whatever the referendum vote is on questions 6 and 7 on April 3rd, please?
Well, it's a non-binding referendum. I think that it is important to consider all the data, and I think that we have to ensure that the information is best presented to the voters so that they get a real picture of what tax classification means and what the actual facts are behind it. So as we move forward as part of the Board of Selectmen, I would anticipate work sessions around this or other discussions to figure out what the best way to fund all of the things that Chelmsford does with its property taxes.
Thank you. George Dixon, what will be your response to the outcome of the referendum votes on those 2 questions after April 3rd, please?
Well, depending on how the voters, what the turnout, what the the result was and what the percentage was. I mean, I have in the past voted in favor of classification. I would assume that I'm not assuming. I will definitely support classification. I'm not talking about any certain amount or anything like that. It's more important that the education of the voters and the taxpayers understand exactly what classification is and how the tax rate is set, when it is set. Right now, we have one organization that shows up when we make that meeting, and the room is crowded. And I mean, that's their prerogative. The taxpayers, there's a little bit of apathy, and I don't think they've ever really understood it. And so this is a way. This non-binding referendum is a way of having them learn a bit about it. And hopefully we can, they turn out well, we get a positive result, and we form a committee to sit down with all parties involved, all stakeholders involved, and see if we can work out a situation that would favor a split tax vote. Yes, I would be in favor.
Okay, thank you. Laura Merrill, a question from one of the voters. In recent years at Fall Town Meeting, surplus funds from previous year's appropriations have been rolled over into a reserve fund called free cash. Do you believe this is the best thing to do with this surplus money? And if not, what would you recommend doing with the balance of unspent funds from appropriations, please?
If anyone has listened to me over the last 3 years, they will know that I think absolutely it is the right thing to return this extra funds to the taxpayers. If we have free cash at the end of the year, that means that we over budgeted. We collected too much money from the taxpayers, and it is their money. It belongs in their pocket.
Thank you. George, your sense on the surplus funds at the end of the year and putting it in free cash, please.
Okay. I guess it all depends on the circumstances of the finances of the year. At the end of the year, how we stand, and if we owe something or we can take care of whatever, if something needs to be taken care of, we will. Otherwise, I think the only time it's been done in the 9 years I've been on the board was Jim Lane and myself fought for it, and we fought the Finance Committee, and we fought somebody else, and I think we returned $900,000 to the taxpayers. And I think it only amounted to $20 or $30 a house, but it was the idea that we didn't forget the taxpayers, and it was their money, and no matter how much it was, it belonged to them. So absolutely, I would agree that we would send it back to the taxpayers.
And Laura, your thoughts on the question about surplus funds at the end of the fiscal year and how they're expended?
I'm Emily.
I'm sorry.
That's
I apologize.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Me too.
So it's Emily Antle. Actually, the town is in debt. It did not fund its pensions. It has unfunded pension benefits. So because the responsibility for paying for that has been passed down, there is no extra money. If there is extra money, the responsible thing in a budget is to absolutely have a rainy day fund so that when emergencies come up, you can pay for them without taking on more debt, without taking on more loans. The responsible thing is if you have a surplus, $900,000, we only put $1 million towards the OPEB, and I think, and I might be wrong on this, but I think it's 1.6 million needed to maintain it. So we are going in deeper to debt. We are not reducing the principal amount. We are barely paying the interest. And anyone who understands anything about debt reduction, credit cards, and compounded interest rates knows that that is a foolish way to pay off debt, because you're not going to do it. You're going to end up paying a much higher interest rate in the aggregate than you are on the original. So I would take that extra $900,000 and put it right into that debt that was not paid by previous town meetings and previous boards, and that would help us significantly in the long run. And I think we need to be looking at long run and not short-term quick fixes that cost us more as the years go on.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one question here, and then I'm going to turn to the press and see if you have questions, and then we'll come back to voters' questions and to league questions. This is a two-part question because it will be different from Emily as someone who is a new candidate. For George and Laura, the question is, what do you consider some of your accomplishments during your prior terms and your goals for the next 3 years? For you, Emily, the question is, what issues would you champion if you were elected, and what are your goals for the next 3 years? So can we start with you, Emily, about your goals if you become a member of the Board of Selectmen, please?
Well, I think that the split tax rate is a good idea. I think that it's really important to be honest with voters. It may not reduce residential tax rates, but what it will do is slow the increases. There are apparently about 450 businesses in Chelmsford, only 85 of which would count as the big businesses that would be paying the higher rate. The rest of them make under $1 million a year and have under 10 employees. And so it's about, whatever that is, I don't know, 85 out of 450, it's maybe a sixth, 1/6, so between 16 and 20% of the businesses, but under 20% of the businesses would be affected by this, and those are the really big businesses. Those are the ones we're looking to fill Kronos's shoes, and they are unaffected by tax rates. They don't care. They pay high tax rates because they are multinational, huge companies that are used to paying high tax rates. And for comparable towns to Chelmsford, not the average, but the comparable towns to Chelmsford, they have split tax rates. It's not going to drive out small businesses, and it's not going to hurt small businesses. I am the wife of a small business owner. We just celebrated our 3rd anniversary of opening. I know what small businesses look like, and they are not as affected. They are not immediately affected, and it is misleading to claim that everyone will suddenly be impacted by giant taxes. So I would like to see classification.
George, as an incumbent, could you list some of the accomplishments that you have done on your 9 years as a member of the Selectmen, and what are your goals for the next term?
Well, I think my biggest accomplishment is I've been transparent and I've been approachable. And I think that I've helped in a lot of citizen requests. I get a lot of the people calling that need, have problems, and they're looking for somebody to give them a hand, and I think I've done a pretty good job at that. And I think a lot of people can attest to that. As far as other accomplishments, I think I was one of the leading proponents of getting a firehouse, and also in the revitalization of the town halls. I chaired the grinder pump committee, and I think we righted something that was very wrong for the people who do have grinder pumps. I think that the fairness committee, we had I was only the liaison, but the ad hoc chair, I guess, and I think we put together a pretty good plan, and up until recently, we've had a pretty good success with taking care of people who maybe were not taken care of so well previously. And one other was I was chairman of the turf fields committee, which I think have been a great. It's been great for the youth activities, and as well as the high school and the junior high school and all the sports youth organizations in town, and probably stopped a lot of injuries too. So just a few, but.
Laura, your accomplishments as a selectman and your goals for your next term if re-elected, please.
I've been working hard on my 3 primary goals of fiscal accountability, in slowing the growth of taxes, slowing developmental growth while protecting and preserving town resources, and improving communication and coordination between the town boards. Regarding the fiscal accountability and the growth of property taxes, I have been working with the town manager. We've asked for several reports to go up on the website, such as the number of DPW, or actually town vehicles that we own and things like that. Also, since I've been on the board, the town manager, along with my support and other selectmen, has put a free cash question on the article every year. I've most recently been working with the other selectmen on the restrictive covenant for the 101 Mill Road home and the deed to allow the town to retain a portion of that land for open space. I helped voted against this, allowing a cell phone tower at the Roberts Field, and have supported low-density housing projects. Regarding the communication, I've been trying to improve the board, encourage more dialogue on the Board of Selectmen over the last few years that I've been on the board. I've worked with the superintendent to make sure that the Dore Whittier assessment information was properly available for the public on this website, on the school website, and trying to get the school committee meetings on the town calendar as well, so that it makes it easier for everyone to find their meetings.
Thank you. So I'll now turn to the press. Margaret, I think you get the first question this time. Margaret Smith from the Chelmsford Independent.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the candidates for being here. My question is, all of the candidates here have diverse backgrounds and I think are bringing something different to the board should they be elected. But for each of you, what is the single most important attribute you think anyone serving on the school committee, regardless of their background, or selectmen, should have?
George, would you start that, please? The single most important attribute for a member of the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen to have.
Well, I think there's probably two. One is being transparent, and the other is being approachable. And then, you know, whatever the needs may be of that particular person or persons, then I think it's their duty to take it to the necessary committees or whatever and try to come to a solution.
Laura, what would you identify as the single most important attribute of a selectman?
The Board of Selectmen represents the entire town, and I think the most important attribute is to be able to come to the meeting every single week with an open mind and to do your research, to be able to get all the facts and all the opinions that you can get, and not to make a decision until you have all the information in front of you.
And Emily, what do you see as the most important attribute of a Chelmsford selectman?
Communication. You have to be able to communicate with a variety of people. You have to be transparent. You have to be able to research issues that you don't know much about. I'm very good at research, and I am able to communicate my research. I am able to synthesize information and explain what I have learned to other people. I think that communication is absolutely vital, and we may not all know all the people that George does and be able to get all of the things done that George can just by being George, but I think that communication and transparency is absolutely key.
Thank you. Alana Melanson from The Sun.
So I understand that a portion of this is not in your purview because it is largely a zoning issue, but how do you reconcile the town's need for more economic development with resident concerns about overdevelopment?
Would you like to start with that one, please, Laura? Reconciling the two possibly incompatible goals?
Exactly. I think the Board of Selectmen should continue to support 40B in that regard, 40B projects developed through the Chelmsford Housing Authority. These projects typically apply 100% towards our state-defined unit goal, and the Housing Authority makes every attempt to work with the abutters and the zoning board to minimize the negative impact on the neighborhood. Typically, when you're working with outside developers, they are more apt to try to squeeze in as many units as they can on the same acreage. And we tended to run into more problems with the community acceptance of these projects. When it comes to finding new opportunities to generate revenue with the town, it's always important to hear what everyone has to say, but at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen to protect the residents of this community first.
Emily, your thoughts on this question of reconciling the need for development and concerns about overdevelopment by some of the voters and residents, please?
The way to preserve green space, which is extremely important to maintain a good community, is planned density. Workforce development housing, commonly known as 40B, is vital to communities. It allows people who make half of the median income of a town. In Chelmsford's case, that's $120,000 a year. The median income is $120,000 a year. People who make half of that are postal workers, teachers, police, fire, nurses, EMTs. It is workforce development housing. It doesn't ruin the value of a neighborhood. It enhances the value of a neighborhood. I love my postal worker. I live in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. I have the bus driver, the postal worker, the school nurse. I do, I swear. I have the librarian. I had a former library trustee. I have all of these people in my neighborhood. And I don't actually know if any of them are in workforce development housing. However, people like those wonderful members of my community are given an opportunity to live where they work through workforce development. Planned density preserves green space by allowing pockets of development near pockets of green space that allows for parks, for recreation, for walking paths.
George, how would you reconcile the need for development in Chelmsford with concerns of overdevelopment in Chelmsford?
Well, first of all, when you asked me a question earlier of my biggest accomplishments, another accomplishment was being chairman of the Affordable Housing Committee, which put a 5-year affordable housing plan together. I worked with some extremely competent people within the town who know the inside and out about the laws. A great attorney and some other people who are very well versed, including somebody from the Housing Authority. We've since then obtained our 10% minimum so that we now are protected against predatory developers. My answer about other developments are that most of them are, as long as people, adhere to the zoning regulations that have all been passed within the town at the town meetings or wherever, some of them may over the years have been done on the ballot. There's always an appeal period when they're put into use. So if people don't appeal within a proper time, I mean, as long as they're following the law, there's not much we can do. But I will say that there's there's another, the amount of people in a town. We need about 1,400 to get to a position of 35,000, and when the next census comes out, that's the word I was trying to use. If we get to 35,000, then we could maybe get our own representative. I think you have to have 35 to qualify, and then we could go in there and fight. So, I don't think it's all that bad in certain areas as long as they adhere to the regulations, and we do have another reason to want it.
Thank you. I think we're starting with you, Emily, on this one. Am I correct on that? These both have to do with the UMass West campus. One is generic and one's a little bit more specific, so I'll throw them both out and you can combine them. Generically, what are your thoughts on the UMass West campus to benefit Chelmsford? And should Chelmsford have placed a bid on the property?
Well, it is my understanding, and I have not had enough time to really dig into this one as much as I would like to, and I will, if elected, before it gets there. I would never come unprepared to a meeting. But it is my understanding that it was originally planned to be some sort of a senior activity center with education opportunities and exercise facilities. That was my understanding of it. I also understand that there are sewer and water issues and concerns in that area, and that may affect some of the development possibilities around it. So, like I said, I don't know as much as I would like to about this particular issue, and I will find out more. But I think that I think in general it's not a great idea for the town to be acquiring properties that it doesn't have a very specific plan for. I think 101 Mill Road is a great example of that. We've had it for years now, and we're not doing anything. There's no plan. We keep asking about definitions of bed and breakfast versus inn. There is no plan, and I want plans. I want long-term goals, and I want to see how acquiring properties will fit into the long-term goals and be concrete steps on our way to getting those goals. So I would like to know more about this, and I will find out more.
George, your thoughts on the UMass West Campus in terms of benefiting Chelmsford, and whether the town of Chelmsford should have bid on purchasing that property?
Well, should have bid, I think, is not the right question, because there hasn't been an opportunity as of the moment to have bid on it.
Okay.
Okay? I want to, full disclosure, I was chairman of the West Campus committee that was formed last spring, and we were looking into all the various, ideas and that could be put in there. And one thing goes back to the Affordable Housing Committee within the 10%. There was an appraisal done by the state. This is owned by the state. The state is looking to grab the money. They had an appraisal done for like $8 million because at that time we hadn't reached our 10%. I think this is important, so to answer this. And they thought they were going to grab $8 million because they could bring a predatory lender in here that could have put in maybe 500, 600 units. Well, when we reached our 10%, we are now in control of that. Our zoning is now in control, and the most they can do by law right now is 22 single-family houses. So I think it puts Chelmsford in a much greater position to be able to purchase that land if, in fact, that's what we decided we want to do. And if we don't want somebody coming in there that's going to do something that's more disadvantage. More of a disadvantage than 22 single-family house lots, which I don't think would be a feasible situation because of what's there. So I think Chelmsford's in the driver's seat right now, but there's never been a bid out there yet for us to have made a bid. So,
thank you. Laura, I'll take it to you, and I'll rephrase it now that I know that piece of information. Your thoughts on the UMass West Campus to benefit Chelmsford, and should one of the thoughts consider the option of Chelmsford bidding on the property should it become available?
I've been following this issue, and just as George had explained, that is the history of the project to date. I would think at this point I would be concerned that if the town were to try to make an offer on that property, I have concerns about the removal of the existing buildings and what kind of liability or hidden expenses might be behind that. I also think that at this point that we do not need to put another capital improvement project, capital bond project on our books. If the Housing Authority were able to come up with the funds on their own and somehow try to come to it in another direction through some grant money or something, that might be a better approach. But I don't want to just buy this property to say that we're going to protect it from development. I don't think that that's a solution at this point for us.
Thank you. George, what would you advocate the town to do to control the growth of expenses over the next 5 years?
I think I'd probably be governor if I could come up with the answer to that one. Well, first of all, we start with OPEB. I think we're like $60-something million in debt with OPEB, our town. I think we were up around $80 million. We have worked out a plan where we come up with additional $1 million a year, and through attrition and what have you, other people have lived. See, what OPEB is post-employment, other post-employment benefits, which means that years ago, when people set up their actuarial tables for their pensions, people outlived 15, 20 years longer than what they had put their money in for. So consequently, we're paying debt for people, and we're still paying salaries of people who have their money's been expired over 15 or 20 years. It's not limited to Chelmsford. It's about a $24 billion debt in the state of Massachusetts, which I thought Governor Patrick would take care of, but he didn't help us too well. So I think we have it under control. It's going to take about 15, 16 years, and according to our auditors who set this plan up, we pay everybody now is paying the going rate, and we're taking an additional $1 million each year and putting it against the past debt. So.
Laura, do you identify any ways that Chelmsford can control expenses growing in the next 5 years?
I think because I think we really need to look at the timing of how we roll out our capital projects. I think that there's a tendency as we see a debt retiring, we immediately look to find as many projects as we can to fill that that gap in the budget. And I think what we really need to do is try to space out our projects better so that we don't run into levy capacity issues. I was very disappointed this past year that when the town took advantage of a recent catch-up assessment year to squeeze in both the modular classrooms for the schools and the addition on the DPW building on Apollo Drive, both in the same year. This required using the full levy capacity and resulted in our first year of the average tax bill being over $7,000. We need to make better decisions regarding our capital spending if we want to control our property taxes and our expenses. One idea to try to control this might be to put all large construction projects, say over $2 or $3 million, out to a resident vote rather than town meeting vote.
Thank you. Emily, your thoughts about slowing down the controlling and slowing down the growth of expenses for the town in the next 5 years?
I think that there are certain projects that we can see coming down the road. I know that my first year as a town meeting rep, we had to vote on getting a new fire truck because those are apparently machines that last about a quarter of a century. We had gotten 27 or 28 years out of ours by paying an extra $20,000 for a new engine, which is less than we would have been paying on a $650,000 loan for a fire truck. I think that, again, this comes back to where I see Chelmsford making short-term decisions instead of looking at the long-term decisions. And you end up with really spiky spending when you're not planning for the long term. So I think that rather than constantly trying to drop things back down, I think we need to create a fund that lets our expenses be more even. The modular classrooms, they were not an optimal decision, but I think that they were the best of all of the options we had. I think that if we were better at planning ahead and looking long-term, we wouldn't be surprised by these things and we wouldn't have to play catch-up. So I think that the goal needs to be to maintain a steady flow and to anticipate increases down the road so that the increases don't feel like such huge spikes and they don't feel surprising, but it is part of the gradual increases that we know are coming because of the expenses we have to pay for.
I'm going to ask one more voter's question, and then I'm going to allow the candidates an opportunity to ask a question of one of their opponents, and then I will ask for their closing statements. Wrong town. Has Chelmsford considered creating its own municipal light department, and do you think that that's something that the town should consider? Laura?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. Has there been consideration and discussion in Chelmsford about creating the town's own municipal light department? And if that discussion was held, is it something you would consider supporting?
Not to my knowledge have we discussed having our own town municipal light program. I grew up in Shrewsbury. Actually, the municipal light program in department in Shrewsbury is about 5 doors down from my parents' home. And I know that it does work, but if it were an idea that would come to Chelmsford, obviously I would like to hear both sides of the issue, what would be the potential cost versus benefit, liabilities, et cetera. And it wouldn't be until I heard all that information that I could really make a decision on that.
Mm-hmm. Emily, anything that you've thought about or have an opinion on about the supporting a municipal light department in the town of Chelmsford?
I think with regard to municipal utilities of any sort, you have to look at the cost of them and what the cost is of the administration and implementation of the departments. I know we have 3 water districts. Could they be streamlined? Maybe. Could we have a regional water district? Maybe. Could we have a regional light district? Maybe. It depends. I would need to see what the proposals are and what it would entail creating a municipal light district and what the rates would then be. So.
And George, is this anything that you have a thought on about whether that would be something for Chelmsford to consider, a municipal light department?
I think anytime there's a chance to save money and, you know, and maybe not lose power or whatever, increase services or help services, you have to take a hard look at it. I mean, Groton has it, Littleton has it, but I'd like to see some figures, and I'd like to know, you know, what happens when we do have a real big storm and the emergencies that come up. What type of help do we get? Is it like the fire department where you get a mutual aid, or do we have to go out and pay additional money? I mean, I really don't know, you know, the intricacies of the whole thing, but anytime we have a chance to, you know, save some money for the consumer as well as the town, I think we have to, you know, look into it.
Okay. Emily, do you have a question for either one of the other people running for the Board of Selectmen that you would like to ask?
How do you intend to promote development?
Is this addressed at whom?
So I have to pick one?
I'm afraid that's my ground.
All right,
You can
Laura,
toss it. You
because
can
you're
flip a
next to me.
coin.
How do you intend to promote development along 129 and in that zone that we've created?
Well, actually, I think over the last couple of years, we've put a lot of things in place to start promoting that development. We have put the overlay districts in place, CEIOD and the BAOD. We have recently hired a director of business development, and we have set aside a budget for marketing materials. So now that we have all the pieces in place, what we need to do as a board is to support the business director and the town in any way that they come to us to increase the development. Right now it is their job to use these tools, and if they find that they are in need of something, they need to come to us through the town manager, and we need to support that.
Thank you. George, do you have a question for either Laura or Emily that you would like to ask?
Well, I was going to ask Laura a question, but she just got to ask one. If that isn't too much, I will ask her because I think she's done some work on this. I'd like to ask Laura how she feels about our opportunities to get a train station in Chelmsford. As a
North Chelmsford resident of 23 years, I am fully in favor of trying to get a train station in North Chelmsford. I think that I've been looking at Vinyl Square forever, and I think the only way to revitalize that area is to give people a reason to stop there. I think that the train station would be a super it would be great for commuters that are trying to get down Route 3. It would help alleviate a lot of the traffic that is going on in southern areas of Chelmsford where people are cutting off the highway to get around there. And so I think that because it would also be a benefit to residents in Westford, it might be an opportunity for us to get more than one of our state representatives involved with this. So I think this would be a great idea.
And Laura, you have an opportunity to ask a question of either Emily or George.
Emily, last fall you voted against the hiring a position for the new business director. Do you have any ideas of how to promote business in that area?
I voted against it because I knew it was going to pass. I voted against it because I felt like it was a vague description. I didn't feel like it was a well laid out description of the job, and I wasn't sure what the town knew what it was really looking for. I've spoken with Lisa Maroney. I think she is working extremely hard to figure out, to catch herself up to what is going on in the town and to help figure out how best to help 129. I think part of the problem we have is that catch-22 where property owners have not updated their properties, and therefore tenants don't want to move in because the properties aren't updated, but then business owners don't want to update because there are no tenants, and so we're at this impasse. And I think her job is more difficult than anyone bargained for, and that was part of the reason I just thought the job wasn't very clear, and I didn't think that the town really knew what it was asking for. I think it's a much more difficult thing than anyone had anticipated.
Thank you. Each of the candidates now has 2 minutes for closing comments, and since I opened with George, I'm going to go down to the other end of the table and work back. So, Emily, if you would give your closing statement, followed by Laura, and then George, you'll have the last word. Emily, please.
I would like to promote sustainable, well-planned policies that support all of Chelmsford's residents now and in the future. I would like to look at the long-term plans for Chelmsford. I would like to look at its vision statement, which should be renewed in a couple of years, if I understand it, as it came up in 2010. It's now 2018. I want to see concrete goals come out of a vision statement. I want to see us attain that vision of Chelmsford as a bustling community. I went to college in Northampton, and when I was there in the late 90s, it was nearly a utopia in terms of tons of businesses, unique small businesses, not a whole lot of giant stuff on the main streets. The main streets were full of restaurants and clothiers and artisan shops and jewelry stores and coffee shops, and it was so I would love to live in that kind of a community. Now, they had a college. There are 5 colleges in the area. That's a bit of a different economic base. However, I do think that there is a version of that, even when you don't have a college right smack in the middle of town. I think that the Vinyl Square commuter rail spur would be a help towards that. But I do like green spaces, I do like parks, and I do like places where people of all ages can gather and be a part of the community and feel like they can go and meet new people and meet old friends and contribute to our little society here. So,
Thank you. And your comments, Laura, your closing statement, please.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting the candidates to speak with us this evening, and to you, Ellen Hardy, for coming to moderate from Westford. Thank you to the audience, both here and at home. My name is Laura Merrill, and I am running for re-election to the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen because I love Chelmsford and all it has to offer our family, including great schools, beautiful open spaces to enjoy, and wonderful residents who take a lot of pride in their town. It's important to me that all residents are able to enjoy the quality of life that Chelmsford can provide. Chelmsford residents have voiced their message to me loud and clear. They want to see a slower growth of rate of property taxes. The Board of Selectmen must be leaders in making property tax growth a priority. And my experience and voting record shows I have what it takes to make the hard decisions regarding town spending. As your selectman, I will continue to support efforts to make tax relief both a priority and a reality, so Chelmsford remains an affordable community for all residents. I will also continue to work with the town manager and boards to develop policies and intended to protect town residents of Chelmsford from overdevelopment and to sustain our town resources for generations to come. My name is Laura Merrill, and I respectfully ask for one of your 2 votes for Chelmsford Board of Selectmen on April 3rd. Thank you for your consideration. If
And
you-
George Dixon, I'm sorry.
And I just
didn't
want
mean
to say,
interrupt.
if you have any questions, please visit my website, electlaramerrill.com.
Thank you, I didn't mean to interrupt. And George Dixon, your closing statement to the voters of Chelmsford, please.
Thank you. I also would like to thank the league. They always put on probably the best debate of all, and I'd like to thank Chelmsford Telemedia, and I'll thank you, Ellen, for being here, and you always do a first-class job. I've been a member of the Board of Selectmen for the last 9 years, and I've enjoyed almost every minute of it. I've enjoyed meeting new people, almost every minute. I have enjoyed meeting new people and working with many talented people on various committees. My biggest goal, other than some we have already discussed earlier this evening, would be to encourage more people to become involved in activities that would impact the broader community. There are many committees to join, interesting meetings to attend, and good things happening in Chelmsford that would benefit from new participants. And I'd like to see more people. I'd like to see some of the younger people get involved too. Not that there's anything wrong with the older people like us, but you know, I'd like to see the young stakeholders get involved and step up to the plate and get really involved. So I want to thank everybody for their support over the last 9 years, and I humbly ask for one of your 2 votes on April 3rd. So thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
each
you
of
for
you for
attending.
running. Thank you. So a reminder that of the 3 candidates who are sitting at this table, you will be able to vote for 2, and that's on Tuesday, April 3rd. If you cannot get to the ballot and you're planning to vote absentee, that vote must be to the town clerk's office by noon on Monday, April 2nd. We thank you all for coming. We thank you for voting. The League reminds you that democracy is not a spectator sport. Good night.
Thank you. Nice job, girls.